To je pro tebe.
Opravdu? Jiří, ale víš, že je to u tebe pozornost?
Ano, je.
Překvapení?
Dalo by se to tak říct.
Jiří, víš, že jsem dojel?
Ano, vím.
Mohu?
Musíš.
Já jsem tak napjatý.
Ano, si.
Tak to jsi nemusel.
Taková malá pozornost.
No, byl jsem požádali takzvaně o prolog, což znamená předslov k něčemu.
Dobrý večer. Bych vám dnes ráda představila spisovatelku a dramatičku Mornu Young, která se narodila v malé vesničce na severovýchodu Skotska, ale dneska už žije v Glasgow. A je to herečka, hudebnice, spisovatelka, dramatička. A její nejznámější hra je Lost at Sea, která měla premiéru v roce 2013. Je o rybářích, kteří loví ryby při pobřežích Skotska a hra zviditelňovala nebezpečnost toho povolání. Byla zároveň i inspirována vlastní ztrátou spisovatelky, která přišla o otce, když jí bylo 5 let. V současné době rediguje Morna svůj první román a pracuje také na své nejnovější hře Neverland, která bude mít premiéru letos v říjnu. Děkuji. Tak přivítejte prosím Mornu Young.
Hello, and thank you so much for the welcome. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here in the Czech Republic. It's my first time. And thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of the Authors Festival. Tonight, I'm going to be reading 2 scenes from my play Lost at Sea. Lost at Sea is based on real-life interviews with fishermen, their families, and the local communities. And all of these stories have been intertwined throughout the script. The first scene that I'm going to read is inspired from interviews about the loss of a real-life boat called the Rosebud, which sunk off the west coast of Scotland in the 1970s. My own grandfather was there at the time, as were many other men from my village, which I turned into a fictional scene within the play. So this scene takes place early on in the play and is performed by the chorus. Thank you.
Dobrý večer. Velice vám děkuji, že jste mě pozvali sem na Měsíc autorského čtení. A přečtu vám několik úryvků ze své hry Lost at Sea. První úryvek, který teď přečtu, tak hovoří je inspirován skutečnou událostí, kdy se loď, která se jmenovala The Rosebud, kdy se potopila v 70. letech u skotského pobřeží. V době té události tam byl i můj dědeček přítomen a byla tam i řada dalších mužů, kteří si to všichni dodnes pamatují. Hra celá je založena na rozhovorech s lidmi, kteří byli přítomni této události a kteří se v té oblasti pohybují. A tuto část přednese chór.
Lost at Sea, a stage play. Act 1, Scene 2. 1975, the year the Grateful was lost. Throw her in at the deep end. If I was to blame, was it the weather, the skipper, fate? See, the fact is, there's nobody to tell. Nobody to say, this is the reason we didn't get off. But that's what goes through your head but you sit and think, how did they nae get off? The boats in the area, we a kent ane another. The Mayday screamed and we arrived to nothing. We was out searching, picking up bits of wood. We found a life jacket and a bit of the hold eye, the registration number on it. A deck full, a side deck full of bits. Ken, you was looking for bodies. We was looking, but we wasna. I wasna wanting to find any. Ken, it was your friends you were looking for. Then a boat nae far from where we were, they'd found somebody. I've been standing on the pier on the Sunday night speaking to him. Moosey, they called him. Mickey Mackenzie. He was 17 and I was 16. The pioneer picked somebody up. She says, we've picked up a young lad. So we pulls alongside, nae idea who it was. They're just passing this body across. He'd a white t-shirt on and a pair of jeans, whoever he was. And they just tucked in his arms. One of his arms swung out, this hand fallen down, and he had this tattoo, swallows, on his hand. And I goes, fucking hell, that's Moosey, that's Ken, my mate, lying on the deck of the boat, dead. Of course, we're all standing there going, who is it? And I'm going, God, I hope it's nae Davy, because even though the boat's gone down and they've put out the Mayday, even if you canna find any trace, you're still hoping that they got on a life raft or speaking to somebody one night, then tacking his body ashore the next. As soon as you start picking up dead people, then the chances are the rest. We had to lay him on fish boxes. We are tarpaulin over the top of him and tie him in. They wouldn't attack him inside the boat. Once you've picked up a body, that's when everybody thinks, Jesus Christ, Ken. They got Davy and twa others. 4 they found. That was my first experience of death at the fishing. 4 found, 4 lost. Oh, deed. I was supposed to be Davy's best man the following week. And instead, I carried him out the kirk. It was a disaster for this town. For weeks after that, we were all in a flippin' daze, Ken. It's difficult to comprehend that all that young men, all very fit men, couldna get off a boat. And see afterwards, believe this if you like, you couldna hear nothing, nae even a bird singing in the tune. 8 widows, 14 children, all wi' mithers and feathers and friends, and the water was like glass the day after it went down. I'd never seen anything like it. The next scene I'm going to read is from later on in the play, which is Act 2, Scene 2. There's a memorial service and the chorus sing, "Will Your Anchor Hold?" The following monologue afterwards is by the character of Eve.
Druhá část, kterou přečtu, je z pozdější části hry. Je to z druhého obrazu, druhé scény. A začíná to tím, že se zpívá hymnus Udrží tě kotva tvá. A následující monolog pronáší postava Evy.
Will your anchor hold in the storms of life? When the clouds unfold their wings of strife, when the strong tides lift and the cables strain, will your anchor drift or firm remain? We have an anchor that keeps the soul steadfast and sure while the billows roll. Fastened to the rock which cannot move, grounded firm and deep in the Saviour's love. There was a knock at the door. I answered it, and this man from the mission was there. And he goes, "Can I speak to you?" And I said to him, "Aye." And he says, "Is there somewhere we could go?" So we went inside, and he turned and says, "I'm really sorry, my dear. He's gone." "Aye? He's at the sea." "No, I'm sorry. He's gone." And I'm thinking, what does he mean he's gone? Then he said there were things we needed to discuss. Everything after is a blur. I was in the house and somebody must have gotten you from school, taken you home. I remember trying to be fine and telling you everything was going to be okay. And there were folk in the house. And all I wanted to do was just go away myself. I still wasna believing that I couldna take it in that he wasna coming back. Then they were saying something about a body and gases. A body will come up and then go back down, and then it will come back up, and if they didn't get it the first time, then they can get it the second time, and then it'll sink again, and that's it. Part of me wanted them to find one, and part of me didn't, because I thought he'd still come walking back in. But then the boat came back, and everyone else was back, and he wasn't. Then I was hoping they'd get a body so we could have a funeral. Then the mission man was saying, "Right, you can have a memorial service." The service. Walking into the kirk and seeing a sea of black. That's it. One day you're a family, and the next, it's gone. All gone. You've got your future mapped out. Then somebody comes, there's a knock at the door, and that's it. Everything. Your hopes, your dreams, gone. I mind sitting down at night and thinking, am I going to do? What am I going to do? I've got a bairn. What am I going to do? I had no idea. And then, during the day, I was still playing mum, still like, oh, we'll do this, and we'll do that, and I'd go to my bed and put the pillow over my head and cry. Then the nightmare started. It was the same one over and over. I came in about from my work and I walked in through the door and thought, there's someone in the house. And Jock would come out of the shower wearing a towel and he'd say, hello, you're there. What have you done with my clothes? And I would say, we had a service. We had a memorial service. I didn't ken you were coming back, and they said you were. And then I'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating, in tears. I had that nightmare for years. I could see him, and then it would fade. He would fade away. The worst thing is, I never got to say goodbye. I mean, I can't mind the last thing I said to him before he went to sea. I can't mind. We'd been arguing about the boat, the life. I didn't want it. And then he was gone. Gone. Every fight plays through your head over and over. What you should have said. What you shouldn't have. The bits you can't remember. Did I tell him that I loved him? Did I tell him he meant the world to me? I pray I did. I pray he knew. Thank you.
Pokud máte někdo nějaký dotaz?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am also a little from Elgin, but it will be difficult to understand it for some other people.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
I mean that I am also a little from Elgin.
From
Also,
Elgin?
when I was never there.
Really?
I was not born there, but in my heart I am a little from Elgin.
Okay.
My question is to this place. Also, when I want to tell you thanks for what you write, because many times we hear books, also sometimes something as poems, but maybe more as jokes, and to remember people which were living here also for us is important. So my question is, why the Light of North, the biggest church of Scotland, was directly in Elgin, and also because you are from the Light of North, if yes, where was or is the Light of East? Thanks. Takže já jenom se přiložím, že jsem chtěl poděkovat, že tady velmi často jsme slýchali literaturu nebo něco jako poezii, ale že to spíš znělo jako vtip a že si myslím, že je důležité připomínat lidi, díky kterým tady vlastně vůbec jsme. A že jsem se chtěl také zeptat, že v Elginu, kde se autorka narodila, je největší kostel ve Skotsku. Tomu kostelu se říká Lucer na severu, já jsem to volně parafrázoval jako světlo severu. A protože ještě existuje světlo západu a světlo jihu, ale světlo východu jsem nenašel, tak jsem se chtěl zeptat, pokud je, tak kde. And because everybody get here also one simple question about referendum in Scotland, I will also ask how you will vote if you know it at the moment. Thanks. Takže jsem se jenom ještě zeptal, jak se bude hlasovat.
Great to hear something that refers to the people, to real people. Okay. And that in the village you come from, Elgin?
Yeah.
It's got the largest church, and it's apparently called the Lantern of the North.
Okay.
And there also exists a Lantern of the West and of the South. So,
okay.
According to you, if there would be a Lantern of the East.
Okay. Thank you for the question. It's interesting because with much of my writing, unless a character themselves is particularly religious, then I often step away from the religious side because I find it such a spirituality to be such a personal subject. But with this play and with writing about the sea, there was no way to avoid not considering religion because so much of the old fishing villages were, their entire lives were based around the churches. So I actually grew up, Elgin's where I went to school, but I grew up in one of the little villages just 10 miles out on the coast. So the churches of light, I'm not so sure about, I'm afraid. I don't know if I misunderstood the lantern.
That's of the north, Lucer na severu, že ano?
Yeah, it's not something I've heard of before, which I haven't ever heard, unfortunately. So unfortunately, I don't know how useful that. Pardon? Uh-huh. Okay.
There is one society in Los Angeles, but it's only society, I think it's not.
Tak já ten tady přeložím. Pokud většinou píšu, tak pokud není nějaká postava, pokud nemá vztah k náboženství, tak se to většinou snažím neřešit nebo o tom nepsat. A proto tam nechce být tenhle rozměr, ten náboženský. Ale v tomhle případě, v případě této hry jsem psala o moři a tam nebylo možné ten náboženský rozměr tam nemít, protože prostě lidé jsou velice náboženští, o kterých to je. A co se týče toho kostela, tak tady nejsem si vědoma toho, že by se tomu říkala Lucer na severu, takže o to ani nemůžu pořádně tady odpovědět, se omlouvám. And the second one, the referendum.
Oh, the referendum. I think every Scottish writer who will visit the Authors' Festival, I will guess will come with a yes vote. I think every artist that I've met, every musician, every poet, every playwright, every painter, apart from J.K. Rowling, actually, is a yes vote. And there's a collective of artists called the National Collective, the emphasis is about organising events, like there's one called Yestival, that's about sharing music and sharing poetry and writings that are all inspired by Scotland and her struggle throughout the years. But yeah, as for me, I'm 100% a yes vote. Always have been a yes vote. I believe, and I'll try and keep this short, sorry. I believe that Scotland is a country, and if we are a country, then we should be in control of ourselves. And I don't think the UK Parliament is necessarily representative of the needs of the Scottish people. London is almost twice the population of Scotland. So I hope and I believe in the future of Scotland as an independent country, and I really hope that in September we're given that opportunity. I hope. Yeah. Was that short enough?
Myslím, že každý skotský autor, který se tu na festivalu objeví, tak přijde s tím, že je rozhodně pro oddělení Skotska. Všichni hudebníci, autoři, malíři, další umělci, vlastně všichni, kromě J.K. Rowling, jsou zřejmě pro oddělení. A existuje i skupina, která se jmenuje National Collective, která se zabývá tím, že organizuje různé akce, na kterých dávají najevo tento svůj názor. Jeden z nich se například jmenuje Yestival. A ten festival je o tom, je o Skotsku a o tom, je inspirován Skotskem a boji, kterým musela ta země projít za svou historii. A co se mě týče, tak já rozhodně říkám ano. A vždy jsem to tak cítila, protože si myslím, že Skotsko je země. A pokud jsme země samostatná, tak bychom se tak tedy měli chovat, měli bychom si být schopni o sobě rozhodovat. A britská vláda ne vždycky je schopná rozhodovat i za nás, rozhodovat tak, aby se to týkalo i Skotska. Například i samotný Londýn, tak tam je jako téměř 2x tolik lidí, kteří žijou v celém Skotsku. Takže z mého pohledu je Skotsko samostatná země a proto doufám, že to v září dopadne tak, že se oddělíme a doufám, že to dopadne takhle. Další dotaz, prosím.
First of all, I would like to tell you that we don't have sea.
Hi, sorry.
We had sea some million years ago, but not now. So it was very touching for us, your play, because we know sea from some 2 weeks vacations, and that's all. Říkám jenom, že pro většinu z nás, nebo hodně z nás to mohlo být dojemný, protože moře známe jenom z týdenní dovolené, nebo tak. But the biggest surprise for me was, because I never expected that I would see one of the best music concerts here. I was very touched by your singing, because it's hard to compare to maybe to Leonard Cohen or something like that. And that's why I would like to ask you, instead of last question, if you could sing it for us once again before you go, because it was so natural and so, it was pure folk music or something like that. And it was really hats off to you, because, and do you sing also professionally, or do you have some CDs? Říkám, že jsem nečekal vůbec, že tady uvidím jeden z nejlepších koncertů hudebních a poprosil jsem jí tedy, jestli by mohla nám tu písničku zaspívat ještě před odchodem třeba, nebo někdy ještě jednou. No.
Thank you. That was really kind. Yeah, I love folk music, and I was brought up singing traditional Scottish folk songs and playing the violin and a Scottish harp called the clarsach, which is a small harp. So it always felt very much like part of my upbringing and part of who I am. And I'm very lucky that as part of my job, I worked as an actor and I still do now, but during that time, I would often get invited to sing for the roles, or you're hired to do a Shakespeare play, but suddenly you're singing 4 songs and doing a dance and playing a piece on the violin. So quite naturally, they kind of blended one into the other. But now, yes, I'm still fortunate that I get to sing quite a lot. I sing with a band called the Fishwives, who, by coincidence, were formed around about the time that I was writing this play. And the lady who formed the choir, called Jane Dolby, her husband had been lost at sea, and his body wasn't found for a year. And during that time, the Fishermen's Mission helped her with money, and she has 3 young children, helped her out. So after that, when Colin's body was recovered, she decided to pay back for the Fishermen's Mission and to make a charity single. So I had a phone call asking me, because of the play and because of my own connection with fishermen, would I come and sing on the single? Which I did, which was lovely, and we were an unofficial competitor for the #1 at Christmas, which was very bizarre, but good. And the Fishermen's Mission were really happy that we'd raised publicity and fundraised for them. So I've just finished, maybe 1 month ago, we recorded an album, a short album, which went on sale yesterday. Yeah, so later on this summer we'll be performing at sea festivals in Cornwall and Devon and around the coastline. So I perform with them. I perform in another band called the Speyside Sessions, which again had a single for charity for Save the Children. And my third one, which is the most crazy one, is I've done quite a lot of work with prisoners, teaching songwriting, and with 2 other professional musicians. And it's very much about working with inmates to develop people skills like communication and teamwork, but using music, which is such an accessible forum, and also encouraging them to write their own lyrics and poetry. So my third band is with a band of inmates in prison, which is the most random one. But again, I think we're going to release another single for charity at some point, which also means it's kind of another opportunity for them to give something back. So most of the projects have some kind of charity link to them, aside from the day job. But yeah, thank you.
So you went further than Johnny Cash, because he just sang in a Folsom prison,
Yeah.
but you are teaching them how to write songs, etc.
Yeah, it was through a theatre in Scotland, as part of their Mental Health Awareness Month.
I'm going to translate the first
Oh,
part.
sorry, thanks.
Dobrá. Tedy děkuji za dotaz, když se přesuneme tady ještě zpátky. Miluji folkovou hudbu a vyrůstala jsem, tedy tím, že když jsem vyrůstala, jsem zpívala tradiční skotské písně, hraju na housle, hrála jsem na skotskou harfu, která se jmenuje Clarissa. A je to prostě část toho, čím jsem. A sice jsem herečka primárně, ale často u toho tady také zpívám a může se stát velice jednoduše, že začnete hrát, se hrajete Shakespearea a najednou zjistíte, že v rámci toho zpíváte 4 písničky a něco tančíte, hrajete ještě na housle, takže se to tak různě prolíná. A hraji s několika kapelami. Jedna z nich se jmenuje Fishwives, která shodou okolností vznikla zhruba v době, kdy jsem psala právě tu hru. Je to sbor a žena, která ji založila, Jane Doby, tak její muž se ztratil na moři a téměř jeden rok nemohli najít jeho tělo. A velice jí ta Fisherman's Mission, takové křesťanské sdružení rybářů, velice pomohlo jeho vdově v té době, dávali peníze, podporovali, pomáhali. A když se potom to tělo našlo, tak ona měla vlastně předtím asi 3 děti, a pak se rozhodla, že by ráda něco udělala, že by se nějak odvděčila, že by něco udělala zpátky pro ně. Takže založila právě tu skupinu a rozhodli se, že udělají album, jednorázové album, které potom půjde výtěžky z jeho prodeje půjde na dobročinné účely. A v tom okamžiku mi zavolali, protože viděli, že jsem psala tu hru, tak jestli bych byla ochotná zpívat, tak jsem samozřejmě přijala, dopadlo to skvěle a dokonce se to album stalo, bylo nejprodávanější album roku ve Skotsku, nebo téměř, takže to se moc nečekalo, ale tak bylo to jenom dobře. A ty byli samozřejmě rádi rybáři, že se tím zviditelnilo to, co dělají a více o nich od té doby ví. A zrovna hrajeme spolu na různých rybářských festivalech a zrovna teďka nedávno jsme dotočili další album. Potom další skupina, se kterou hraju, se jmenuje Speyside Sessions a tam jsme také teda dělali album na dobročinné účely. A třetí kapela, kterou mám, tak pracuji s vězni. Víceméně chodím do věznic a učíme ještě s dalšími 2 hudebníky psát texty a psát poezii a víceméně je to takový způsob, že skrze hudbu je učíme nějak pracovat s těmi jakoby mezilidskými schopnosti, učíme je komunikovat, učíme nějak zapojovat svou kreativitu uvnitř a hlavně podporujeme v tom, aby vytvářeli vlastní texty a vlastní poezii. Takže mají i určitý možnost dát zpátky něco společnosti. Takže moje třetí kaple je teda skupina se skupinou vězňů a také z toho vznikne časem album, které bude na dobročinné účely.
Thank you.
I want just to say that there are 2 or maybe 3 musical festivals every week here in Czech Republic. But one of the best singers we have here, thanks to you, so it's really funny that with no publicity almost, that we have one of the best female voices now here. A jenom říkám, že jsou tady 20 festivaly týdně teďka hudební a my z okolností máme jeden z nejlepších hlasů tady, možno slyšet docela nenápadně.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Will you tell us more about your new book?
Pardon?
What about your new book? Will you tell us more?
Oh yes, which has been an ongoing project alongside writing Lost at Sea.
Jestli byste nám mohla něco říct o své nové knize, na které pracujete. Sorry, please go on.
Which is entirely different because it's a young adult fantasy fiction. But I often find it easiest to work on 2 pieces at once. And I've got myself into a habit that I work on one piece in the morning and the second one in the afternoon. So when I was writing Lost at Sea, it was there was very tragic interviews. It was very, very heavy, very tough to write and to listen to all these stories. And fishing's still the most dangerous job in the UK. So there are so many stories, there were many interviews. So it was difficult, it was tough to write. So at the same time I wrote a young adult fantasy fiction book that was entirely the opposite. That is about a young heroine called Maya, who is a descendant from the first star that shone. And it follows her adventure. It's a coming-of-age story. And it's about her challenges through life as she discovers who she is and faces challenges along the way. So I'm at my final edit now, and I should hopefully have it finished, and pass it on by hopefully the end of August. Yeah, so that's been my first kind of completed novel, very different from the playwriting. Yeah.
So we will keep our fingers crossed for you.
Thank you very much.
I ten román, který jsem psala, tak byl takový vedlejší projekt vedle toho Lost at Sea, vedle té dramatické hry. A je to něco úplně jiného, je to fantazie pro mladé čtenáře. Naučila jsem se totiž, zjistila jsem, že mi nejvíce vyhovuje, když mohu pracovat na 2 věcech zároveň, ráno na jednom projektu a večer na druhém. A v případě toho Lost at Sea, tak jsem musela pracovat se strašnou spoustou tragických rozhovorů a bylo to velice těžké to pořád poslouchat, ty příběhy, a rybolov to vlastně zůstává stále nejtěžší prací ve Velké Británii. Takže mi dělalo velice dobře, že jsem potom mohla odpoledne se zabývat něčím úplně jiným. To bylo právě knihou pro děti téměř, pro mladé čtenáře. Hlavní hrdinka se jmenuje Mája a je to potomek první hvězdy, která kdy v životě právě zasvítila nad zemí. A je to o dospívání, o překážkách, se kterými se člověk setkává, když dospívá. A právě to čtu naposled, dělám už vlastně ten poslední redakci, než to potom pošlu dál a doufám, že to budu mít hotové na konci srpna. Takže to bude můj první dodělaný román.
Já bych chtěl navázat na tu předešlou otázku, jak často...
Sorry.
Dobrý večer. Jak často vidíte moře? Jak dlouho, jak nejdéle vydržíte bez něj, ale dovedete si představit, že žijete na kontinentě a narodíte se a nikdy moře neuvidíte? Jaký vidíte rozdíl třeba mezi kontinentálním divadlem a ostrovanským divadlem? Je tam nějaký rozdíl pro vás třeba?
How often do you have to look out at the sea, or do you watch the sea? If you could imagine going away from it, and if yes, then for how long? And if you could imagine growing up on a continent and never seeing the sea in your entire life. And the final question: is there a difference between the continental theatre and the island theatre, or do you think there is? And if there is, then what is it?
Okay, I'll keep an eye on this. Sorry, you'll need this. Thank you. The sea. I live in Glasgow now, so I don't get to see the sea as often as I would like to now. Growing up, in my small fishing village, every day we were surrounded. I live on a peninsula, so there were the sandy front beaches and the rocky back beach and a harbour at the end. And all of my childhood memories are dominated by the sea, from watching dolphins jump at my grand's house to the fishermen bringing fish home to the door and knocking for you. And there's an expression which came up time and time again when I was researching Lost at Sea about having salt in your blood. You're a child of the sea, so you have salt blood. And I don't think I really understood what that meant for a long time, because when you're young, you take so much for granted. It's just there, and you think everyone's life is the same, until you go away. And I lived in Sheffield and I lived in London, and it was when I decided to write Lost at Sea that I moved back to my little fishing village, which was very different from London, back home. So all these memories came flooding back, and the reminder, and this line about having salt blood and being a part of the sea. So now for my job, and for my work and my theatre contracts, I have to be based in Glasgow, but I have this overwhelming desire to retire already. Maybe that's the wrong word. To have the little cottage on a hill with the view of the sea. And people tell me I'm probably 30 years too young for this, but it's kind of that's my dream. It feels a big part of everything of my life. And writing Lost at Sea was such a pivotal point in my own life for me, that it really cemented that relationship there. I think that was the second question, but can you go away from it?
If you could imagine never seeing the sea again.
Oh no.
Maybe
No.
I'll translate the first one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tak dneska už žiji v Glasgow, takže moře nevídám tak často, ale vyrůstala jsem víceméně na poloostrově, takže jsem měla moře neustále okolo sebe a pamatuju si, mé dětské vzpomínky jsou plné písků a potom kamenů a útesů. Pamatuju si delfíny na moři a rybáře, kteří se vraceli s úlovkem domů. A často se tam objevovala otázka o tom, že jestli má člověk sůl v krvi. A nikdy jsem moc nevěděla, dlouho jsem moc nevěděla, co to znamená, protože když je člověk malý, tak bere věci tak, jak jsou a myslí si, že všichni to mají úplně stejně. Ale pak jsem se odstěhovala pryč ze Skotska do Sheffieldu a do Londýna a vrátila jsem se zpátky až po delší době, vlastně v okamžiku, kdy jsem začala psát tu hru, jsem začala psát Lost at Sea. A najednou se všechno vrátilo, všechny vzpomínky, všechno to, jak jsem vyrůstala. A i když dneska musím být v Glasgow kvůli práci a kvůli tomu, že tam jsou většina zakázek a tam divadlo, tak občas zjišťuju, že bych možná chtěla, možná jako už do důchodu nebo něco podobného, pořídit si malou chaloupku někde na venkově u moře. A když o tom lidem říkám, tak mi říkají, že to mám ještě 30 let, bych se měla počkat. Ale je to takový sen, takže je to vlastně velká část mě. Takže možná v tom spočívá právě ta sůl v krvi. A psaní Lost at Sea byla pro mě obrovská změna. Byl to okamžik, kdy jsem můj život změnil od základu a myslím, že to velice zpečetilo vztah, který právě jsem v té krajině svého dětství měla.
Thank you. And
if you could imagine never seeing the sea around the continent and continental island theatre.
So the third one, can I imagine never seeing the sea? Never. No, I can't imagine what life would be like without that. No, and it's part of the sea plays such a big influence in so much of what I do. I'm actually developing another play at the moment through a new playwrights award. I was awarded this year the new playwright of Scotland, which also is called Netting and is very much fishing from a female perspective. So it's still there. The stories are still there, and sometimes I think maybe I should step away, but it's just such a big influence for me. And continental theatre versus UK theatre is a very interesting question. Part of the reason why I stay in Scotland now is because I write in a dialect called Doric, which is spoken throughout the north-east coast of Scotland, and it's a fisher language. It's used within Sunset Song, if you know Lewis Crassick Gibbon's book. Is written in Doric, so it's the tongue of the fishing and the farming folk. So that was part of my reason for staying in Scotland, because of this connection and with the words and wanting to explore the language. More recently, I've begun to kind of dip my toe into the big wide world of international theatre, and there's so much to explore. I've been particularly becoming really interested in the theatre of France, and a practitioner, Ariane Manouchkine, who's a director who's very bold in style, and I think this is quite representative of work that I see. In Scotland, theatre we can sometimes play it quite safe. I think we're good at maybe quirky pieces, but something we don't do so much is the big scale, the big theatrical pieces, and yeah, I'm kind of opening this door at the moment of exploration, and I hope to continue to walk down it. I would love to see the theatre when I'm here, but the schedule's looking quite tight, so I'm not sure I'll be able to, unfortunately, which is a shame, unless there's a show on after this evening. Yeah.
Tak na tu první otázku, jestli bych si dokázala představit, že budu žít bez moře, tak ne, v žádném případě. Je to neuvěřitelný zdroj inspirace. A další hra, na které zrovna pracuji, je to z grantu, který jsem dostala. Vyhrála jsem cenu pro New Playwright of Scotland a jmenuje se Netting a je to o ženě, o rybářce, je to o rybaření z pohledu ženy. A občas si říkám, že bych to mohla ta témata opustit, ale pak si řeknu, že úplně ne. A co se týče rozdílu mezi ostrovním britským divadlem a divadlem na evropském kontinentu, tak jeden z důvodů, proč já třeba zůstávám ve Skotsku a proč asi tam zůstávat budu ještě chvíli, je kvůli tomu Doric, takové dorské nářečí, což je mluva rybářů. A jsou v něm některé knihy, už v něm i vyšly, dokonce například The Sunset Song. A mě ta řeč velice zajímá, chtěla bych se jí dále věnovat, takže i proto zůstávám já ve Skotsku. Ale dávno jsem se začala zajímat i o mezinárodní divadlo a jsem tím prostě unesena, je toho opravdu hrozně moc, co člověk, na co může narazit a co se může naučit, co může zjišťovat. Protože teďka zrovna se zajímám o francouzské divadlo. Názvala jsem na dílo režiséra Ariana Manouchkina, který mi přijde velice odvážný, že reprezentuje tu francouzskou scénu. A ve Skotsku my jsme možná lépe zvládáme takové menší divadelní hry a moc neděláme ty celovečerní, prostě opravdu velká představení, dramatická. A tak se tady snažím otevřít dveře do těchto nových možností. A velice ráda bych se podívala na nějaké divadelní představení tady, ale zdá se, že na to asi nebudeme mít úplně čas. Další dotaz? Ještě tak až na konec vypouští to na to.
Hi, I'd like to get back to your story you've just read. I would like to know how does this story, how does it touch the people, and especially the people from your village, and if you've been experienced that someone rejected to read it or get closer anyway. Já jsem se ptala, jak tenhle ten příběh rezonuje v lidech, co autorka dneska četla, a jestli se setkala s tím, že by někdo odmítl si ten příběh číst nebo se k němu nějak dostat zpátky jako ke vzpomínce.
When I opened the door with writing Lost at Sea, it was a big decision for me. Writing this play had existed in my mind for many years, and I never really felt brave enough to do it. And following a series of a time of my life, I made the decision that it was the time. And first of all, I spoke to my family, and I asked them how they felt about it, and they were all very supportive and really encouraging of the fact that the many men who've been lost at sea, that there should be some form of tribute for them. When I started to speak to men in the village and the families, there was a very welcome response, and in a way, it's a situation that I don't think any writer could have necessarily walked into, but there was a level of trust and respect for me because I knew what that was like, because I had lost my dad that way, and they knew him, and he was their friend. So there was a massive amount of responsibility, but also a lot of trust from a lot of people who gave me their stories and asked me to help pay a tribute to the people who were lost, which is why this became such an important piece of work for me as well, because there was this weight behind me that I can't get this wrong, and if I do, my fishing village will kick me out and I won't be welcome again. So yeah, it was really, really important to me to be able to do this right and to pay tribute. But there was a very lovely moment when I'd maybe interviewed, say, 8 ex-fishermen from the village, and I saw one of them walking down the road one day who said, oh, you know, you've really started something here. You've got us all talking about the old days. We're all about the fishing again and about that time and this time and things that they hadn't spoken about for years. And suddenly a lot of the fishermen or ex-fishermen were sitting in the pub together, remembering the herring days and the massive silver and all the mad, funny incidents they had, which was really nice for me that had started that as well. Thank you. I don't know if there was a second part to that question or if I...
No,
that was it? Yeah. Thank you.
Right. Tak když jsem začala psát Lost at Sea, tak bylo to něco, co jsem chtěla udělat už velice dlouho, ale chyběla mi odvaha. A pak jsem jednoho dne tedy seznala, že nastal ten pravý čas a že už to musí ven. A proto první, zatím jsem s tím šla, byla má rodina. A ptala jsem se jich, co se o tom myslí. A oni mě neuvěřitelně podpořili. Mysleli si, že je potřeba vytvořit dílo, které by nějak oslavovalo muže, kteří se ztratili na moři, kteří byli ztraceni na moři. Pak jsem se zeptala rodin rybářů, vlastně těch, se kterými bych se o tom bavila. A i ti mi vyjádřili velkou podporu. A cítila jsem tam určitou důvěru, jakýsi respekt, protože věděli, že jsem v tom s nimi, že se mi stalo to samé, že jsem si tím prošla, protože mě tam stejným způsobem zemřel otec, který byl jejich přítel, znali ho, věděli, že jsem to zažila také i já. A proto jsem cítila, že mi opravdu v tomhle důvěřují, že to udělám dobře. A důvěřují mi natolik, že mi dají své příběhy a budu věřit v to, že nějak předělám tak, aby to bylo správně. A proto to pro mě bylo důležité, abych to neskazila, abych to udělala tak, jak to nejlépe jde, protože už jsem si říká, že když to náhodou nezvládnu, tak mě potom moje vesnička zavrhne. A vybavuju si jeden takový zajímavý příběh, který se k tomu váže. Jednoho dne jsem šla po ulici v té vesnici a potkala jsem jednoho z těch rybářů, z těch bývalých rybářů, se kterými jsem hovořila, se kterými jsem dělala ty rozhovory. A on mi povídá, no teď si teda úplně něco začala, teďka jsme začali všichni vzpomínat zase na stará léta a na to, jaký to tehdy bylo a úplně se bavíme o věcech, o kterých jsme se nebavili už několik desítek let. A začali se scházet v hospodě všichni bývalí rybáři a bavit se o tom, jak tehdy lovili sledě a o dalších veselých příhodách. Takže byla velice ráda, že i svým způsobem napomohla k tomu, aby si lidé zase začali takhle propojovat dohromady.
Kdybych možná pokračovala trošičku, já bych se chtěla zeptat, jestli v té vaší vesničce nebo ve Skotsku je nějaký zvyk nebo nějaký drobný rituál, který používají rybáři předtím, než vyplují na moře, protože jsem se s něčím takovým setkala v Británii a jestli máte taky něco takového specifického.
So, is there some sort of a ritual or a thing that the fishermen would do before they go out to sea in your village? Because the lady says that she encountered something similar in Brittany. Yes.
Hello. There were many superstitions of the fishermen. I spent quite a long time before conducting the interviews in the School of Scottish Studies at Edinburgh University and looking through stories from Shetland to the Western Isles to across to the northeast coast. And there were always similar but little differences in there. So I came across everything from, never set sail on a Sunday, never do your washing the day the man leaves because he might be washed away, never whistle because the wind will come, never say salmon on a boat, never say rabbit on a boat. There's so many different ones. Never have a woman on a boat either. Although a lot of the younger fishermen I spoke to are a different generation now who said, no, we don't believe that. That was kind of the older generation, so we don't do this. And when I was researching the play, I, for 2 days, joined a fishing boat, a prawn fishing boat. I don't think, as much as I think the sea's in my blood, I don't think I'm a natural fisherman. But I joined this crew for the experience, and they didn't blink about having a girl on board. They just went, yeah, it's fine, but put some gloves on and do some work. So I did. But yeah, I think it depends on where you are, where you're from, but they've definitely, I think over the years, lessened somewhat now. Thanks.
Existuje opravdu mnoho pověr. A předtím, než jsem se vydala do vesnice přímo dělat ty rozhovory s lidmi, tak jsem strávila mnoho času na katedře skotských studií na Edinburghské univerzitě, kde jsem se pročítala příběhy právě o tomhle tématu od Skotska, od toho jižního Skotska až nahoru na Shetlandské ostrovy. A zjistila jsem opravdu, že jich existuje neuvěřitelné množství. Třeba nikdy nesmíte vyplouvat v neděli, nikdy nesmíte prát v den, kdy muž odjíždí, protože by ho to mohlo spláchnout. Nikdy nesmíte na lodi říct losos, nikdy nesmíte na lodi říct zajíc. A i na to jsem narazila, že na lodi nesmí být v žádném případě žena. Nicméně pak, když jsem se potom bavila s mladými rybáři, už s tou další generací, tak se říkali, že už to nějak neřeší, že to je spíš věc té starší generace a že jim tady ty věci rozhodně nějak nevadí. A když jsem sbírala materiál na hru, tak jsem na 2 dny vyjela i s rybáři na loď. A sice si myslím, že mám sůl v krvi, jak se říká, ale nejsem úplně dobrým rybářem. Ale rozhodně jim nějak nevadilo, že měli na lodi holku. Prostě řekli, jo, jako klidně můžeš, nevadí nám to, hlavně si vem nějaké rukavice a trochu tady udělej kus práce a pak to bude v pořádku. Takže spíš dneska už se na to tolik nehledí. Tak jo, další dotaz? Tak ještě tamhle vzadu.
Good evening. Thank you for reading.
Thank you.
I would like to ask about the play, if it's still playing in theaters, and if it's possible to see it in some different country than England or Scotland, and if yes, what is the feedback from the audience without salt in the blood? And also, I would like to add the singing request again. So, thank you. Len som sa chcel spýtať, že či je hra ešte niekde ako hraná a či sa hrala niekde inde ako na britskom poloostrove a v prípade, že áno, aký je teda feedback a hlavne od obecenstva, ktoré nemá nejakú skúsenosť s morom.
Thank you. Lost at Sea received its first rehearsed reading in March last year, and I made the decision not to have it in the central belt of Scotland, in Edinburgh, Glasgow, but to play it in Lossiemouth, which is a smaller fishing village back up north. And this was really important to me because it's the area that the stories came from. It's the language of that area, and it felt like it felt like there was an ownership of other people apart from me with this piece of work. I didn't quite realise how packed the hall would be. It was supposed to be a 250-seater, which completely sold out, and then we were selling £1 standing tickets. So the hall was just people everywhere, standing, sitting, squeezing as much as you could, and it was this incredible atmosphere. So there was a lot of people at that event who were in some way related to the fishing. And actually the final scene of the play, there's a list of the fishermen's names who have been lost from the northeast of Scotland during the time period of the play, which is from about the 70s to present. And that's read at the end. So that was very personal for a lot of people who were sitting in the audience and maybe hearing their brother's name or their father's name or somebody. But it felt, again, like the right thing to do when I spoke to people, that this was a form of tribute. So at the moment, Lost at Sea has been commissioned by a theatre called Eden Court, which is in Inverness. So it won't actually officially open until this time next year. And it will tour, first of all, from the UK, Scotland and England. And then the production company are really keen that it can also look at travelling further afield, particularly to places that have some kind of fishing connection, because everywhere that has fishing will have experienced this kind of loss as well. I can't remember if that was everything that.
Well, it was how do the people who don't have the sea react to it?
Okay, and how do people who don't have the sea connection react? That was a question I asked myself a lot when we were looking at where the tour would play to, and will a play about fishing, will that resonate in somewhere without fishing? But what I found, and in fact, one of the actresses who read the role of Eve, which was the second monologue I read, something that she'd said that seemed to ring true with the audience that night particularly was, this isn't just a play about fish and about a boat and about fishermen. It's the universal theme of loss. And I think loss is something that everyone can relate to in some way. It's obviously a big subject, but it's something that touches people. When I read this at Scottish Parliament, I read this same extract at the Scottish Parliament to a non-fishing audience. It was politicians and councillors, and again that was quite a moment, because there was quite a lot of tears from the Parliament and people. So in a way it was interesting for me, and again the reasoning of people saying that the idea of loss seems to touch people, and I hope, my biggest hope with this has always been to some way to tribute and to honour, and I hope that the idea of loss in it is a part of that as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tak první čtená zkouška Lost at Sea proběhla v srpnu loňského roku. A pak jsem se rozhodla tu hru uvést ne v na tom hlavním skotském tahu, ne tady v Edinburghu a v Glasgow, ale v Lossiemouth, což je vesnice, která je v oblasti, odkud hra pochází. Mluví i tou řečí, ve které je hra psaná. A měla jsem pocit, že ta hra není jenom moje a že si zaslouží nebo měla by být uvedena tam, kde jsou i lidé, kterým patří také. No a naprosto jsem nečekala, že bude takhle narváno. Divadlo bylo zcela vyprodané, nakonec jsme i prodávali extra vstupenky za 1 libru na stání. Bylo to naprosto plné, byla tam úplně neuvěřitelná atmosféra. A mnoho diváků byli rybáři sami, takže měli k tomu svůj vlastní osobní vztah. Na konci hry je seznam jmen všech rybářů, kteří zemřeli zhruba v době, kdy se ta hra odehrává, takže od 70. let až do dnes. A ta část byla velice osobní pro řadu lidí, protože tam mohli slyšet jméno třeba svého bratra nebo otce. A měla jsem pocit, že to je prostě něco, co musím udělat. Prostě tuhle poctu musím nějak dovést do konce. A teď získala práva na hru divadlo, které se jmenuje Erinku, který je v Invernessu a bude zahájeno příští rok. A nejdříve to bude putovat po Británii, ale potom by velice rádi produkce poslat divadelní představení dál. A hlavně se snaží to poslat na místa, kde mají také rybářskou kulturu, protože si myslí, ta reakce bude stejná. Nicméně, co se týče reakce lidí, kteří moře neznají a kteří nejsou rybáři, nepochází z toho prostoru, tak jedna herečka, ta, která četla roli Evy, kterou jsem dnes tady četla před chvílí, tak poznamenala, že to není hra, která je jenom o rybách a o lodích a o rybářích, ale že se dotýká obecně tématu ztráty. A ztráta to je něco, co všichni nějak někdy pocítili. A je to něco, k čemu se mohou, co si v sobě mohou vztáhnout i lidé, kteří nikdy nerybařili. A tenhle stejný úryvek, jako jsem četla zde, tak naposledy jsem ho četla, to bylo ve skotském parlamentu. A teklo tam mnoho slz, velice to zapůsobilo, i když to rozhodně nebylo obecenstvo, které by mělo cokoliv společného s rybařením. Takže doufám, že ta oslava toho tématu, že bude obecnější než obvykle. Hlavně bych chtěla, aby to byla právě takový oslav, vzpomínka na ty rybáře a na to, co se obecně, tu ztrátu, která se tam odehrávala. Takže vám tedy děkuji a bohužel to mám muset končit, protože tam asi, já myslím, že není čas vůbec, nebo já nevím. No. Jo, tak jo. Can sing in the pub, because you have to leave the stage. Tak vám děkuji za všechno.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.